So my Hollywood call sign, they call Hollywood call sign in the military, was Sandman.
Stop it.
Yes,
Wait, nice call, Tom.
That was actually my Hollywood call sign was
I'm
Sandman.
feeling something right now.
Yeah,
Like,
so
the hair on the back of my mullet is standing up. Like, this is legit. Welcome to Brain Stoke. We are so excited today. We are in studios of Aspire Counseling Network and Aspire Medical in Draper, one of their locations among 5 others throughout the state. We're grateful that they allowed us to take their offices and to be here today with Dallen Atack of Utah High School Cycling League.
Yeah, Dallen has been with the league. How many years have you been with the league now?
This is going on to my 6th race season.
Okay, and you're the executive director of the Utah Cycling League, which is affiliated with NICA, and we'll get into all of that. Formerly a brigadier general in the National Guard, and you worked for 32 years, I believe, in various roles there. So we'll talk about some of the fun things that have happened there. You've witnessed the Utah Cycling League grow from, I'm guessing, maybe 1,000 riders to now you're seeing roughly 7,000 or more riders. So you manage, I think, roughly 150 seasonal employees. And how many yearly employees do you also have?
Our total staff is 8 right now.
Okay.
So 8 full-time staff.
And then you ramp up big time, and then you come back down to 8 again.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So you're a puppet master, pushing all the buttons, trying to make this all work.
Yeah, it's luckily we've got a ton of good people. They come from all aspects of this, all areas of the state and all aspects of we've got alum to 60-year-olds that have been biking for years. We've got doctors, and we've got students that all come together and part of our race crew to assist us put this thing together when it's race season.
So, in terms of race season, how many races do you put on a year?
This year we're scheduled for 25. So we'll have with 6 geographical regions, we'll have 4 races for each region, and then our state championship race, which we just announced yesterday is going to be in Cedar City.
Okay.
Out at Three Peaks.
Yes. Okay, right on. Great. That's awesome.
Awesome location.
Yeah. So in terms of the staff and all the people you manage, you're doing rough three races a weekend, every weekend up until state, I guess. That's probably how it breaks down.
Exactly. So we'll start August 19th. With 3 races, and then it's every weekend we have an additional 3 races. We've got one weekend off. That's our preparation for state, and then we head down to Cedar City and we'll put on one heck of a good show.
Just to give some of our listeners kind of some context or understanding, the Utah Cycling League is a race league for high schools in the state. Everyone is typically considered a club within their high school for the most part, I believe. And the coaches are all volunteers. And there's some requirements or expectations that there is, at least on the team, or like at any given practice, there needs to be 1 adult for every 6 riders, right? So the amount of involvement within the state and the number of adults that participate in the league in some form or fashion, either as a head coach, assistant coach, what we call ride leaders. Do you have any idea what that number looks like? If we've got roughly 7,000 riders, I guess we can do the math pretty easy. But how many adults also participate with the league?
I'm going to get to that in just one second, but I want to back up just one little bit. You made a comment. We are not a race league. You mentioned that we're a race league. We're actually a youth development organization.
Okay.
As a 501c3 nonprofit, our mission, our vision, and our values all center around development of youth. Nowhere in any of those do we actually have competition.
Okay.
And actually, shooting for the podium, we use racing as, and riding bikes as a way to get these student athletes excited. about coming out, about working hard in practice, about doing well, about setting goals. So most of the things we do, may revolve around racing, but we consider ourselves a youth development organization first. Now, with that, to answer your question on the coaches, last year we had 3,700 registered coaches. The majority of them are parents. We'll get a couple of alum now and then. We may get some wonderful adults that just want to be a part of the league. Usually there's one or two that maybe come from some of the local bike shops that like to come help out with the teams. But with that ratio, we usually have about a 1-to-2 adult to student ratio, because we do require teams to have that 1-to-6 ratio when it's time to practice. And adults' schedule usually is not as flexible as the kids, so it takes about a 1-to-2 ratio to ensure a 1-to-6 ratio come practice time.
Yeah.
It's remarkable, just the sheer numbers. When we think about organizationally, 7,000 riders, probably, marching towards 8,000 in 2023. You've got 3,700 coaches, plus you've got probably double the number of coaches in ride leaders or more. I mean, overall, just to give the listeners, who are kind of hearing all of this, 30 to 40,000 people, throughout the state of Utah that are involved in the cycling league and the development of Utah youth, to your point. And that kind of gives some frame to why Brainstoke got involved as a sponsor of the league. And Brainstoke's mission, which is proactive mental health, and our partnership with Aspire Counseling and Aspire Medical is for what you described as your mission. And so it was a natural thing for us to be involved in. One, because Preston and I belong to the Dirt Church, and hopefully that there's tongue-in-cheek, people understand that. But it's part of our lives, and it's been a part of our lives as a sport because we love it. But it's also become part of our lives because of our own children and coaching children in our communities, that this truly is a mission for youth development. And I think that so many parents and coaches, we want to hear your story today about your why and what got you involved in it. But it truly is because of our love of these kids. And when you go to a race, for our listeners, it is literally like a small city was built for the weekend and then it goes away. And it's amazing the energy. I picture it like the modern day Woodstock, but youth mountain bike racing. The people who show up to the races are so excited for those kids who are competing that day. The race, is run and managed by the league. It comes off with a hitch. I know that there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, but if you go to a race, it is so professionally run, from the people who are receiving you when you pull into the parking lot to the people who are actually timing the races. Everything is live streamed to a certain extent. Like, this is legit. This is like a legit production that is going on. And the result is kids having a great experience. And their parents are stoked to do it because it is such a great vibe of what's going on. And so we love the league, truly, not just because we are sponsors of it, but we sponsor it because the impact that it's had on our own lives and the kids' lives that we have been involved in. And so this is not just a normal episode to us because of what it represents for the numbers of kids who are involved in it, the adults that are involved in it. And at the end of the day, we want everybody involved in Utah High School Cycling League to know that the people involved in it matter. The time and commitment of the people involved matter. One, to the parents and the children, but also to the coaches. And thank you, Dallen, you and your team, for all that you do. It matters. This is having a positive impact on the state of Utah. So thank you. We're happy to have you here today. Why don't we dive in? Let's start, if you don't mind, because everybody is intrigued, in my opinion. When they look at the league, they go to a race, they see the numbers of people involved. the question becomes, how is this happening, and why are people doing what they're doing from top to bottom, and meaning the league? So give some background of yourself, if you wouldn't mind, personally, and then dive into maybe some of the background and the why behind, how this all began in Utah.
Well, I'm not the founder of the league. It was founded by a true entrepreneur, Lori Harward. She's the one that worked with NICA back in 2011, got the league started in the first year of racing was 2012, 300 riders, maybe about 100 and some coaches, but she set the ball rolling, and every year it just seemed like the league would double and double and double. She was the leader of this league for a solid 6 years, and did an amazing job of building this and getting it started.
How did she begin that, if you don't mind, just going back even a little bit further, because Utah is part of a larger system of NICA right throughout the country. And so talk about that a little bit too, and give some context to the size of Utah compared to other states in terms of just the league.
Yes, and honestly, I don't know her story very well. Lori and I are not acquainted with each other. She had already stepped down before I came into the league, but NICA itself started a number of years before. It started in the Berkeley, California area. They started mountain bike racing, and they had their own Northern California League, and then a Southern California League came in, and they decided that, hey, this is kind of cool. We ought to try to make this a nationwide thing. This interscholastic cycling youth development organization could really be cool. So they were the ones that got it started. Now, since it's been started, Utah, you'd say, really got it rolling. I mean, it's we are now over a quarter of the total student athletes in the nation. At that 7,000, NICA will probably come. They'll probably hit about 25,000 student athletes this year, with 7,000 of them coming from Utah.
Wow.
There's 30 states that have got NICA leagues in them now. The next largest are probably about 2, maybe 3,000. So really, the demographic of Utah is just phenomenal for this. And I look at it, that people ask, well, why Utah? Why did Utah do so well? Because obviously we don't have the population of the Californias or Texas or Arizona, some of these other places.
Yeah, it's a small market compared
to Colorado. Why did Utah? Why did it hit so much? But some of the easy looks are, well, there's not many places you could live in this state and not be within 20 minutes of a trailhead.
Right.
The trails are amazing here, and it's not that hard to find some place to get to. Whether you ride your bike there or just a short, throw the bike in the back of a pickup truck and get there. So we've got a real advantage. And when you look at our population centers, most of our heaviest population centers are very close to mountain trails. So that helps us a lot. Secondly, Utahns generally love the outdoors. We are an active lifestyle. We're an outdoor lifestyle, and being able to be outdoors and do something, cool like mountain biking. Yeah, that really takes off. We're also a very family-oriented state, and this is one of the few sports that you can really participate family-wide. You've got parents that can do it with siblings all the way down to 5, 6 years old. We see those age kids not in our league, but we'll see them out riding with their families. And the parents, as we said earlier, they're the coaches. Most parents, when they're going to your normal stick and ball sports, are sitting in the bleachers and watching. In our league, that's not really an option. Most of them have to assist somehow. So they're not just spectators, they're participants.
Yep.
With the league. So those are things that I think have all rolled together to make this perfect storm. But then the last thing that I think is the most important has been the coaching staff that we've had. The league was started by some very passionate individuals. Lori and those first sets of coaches were just extremely passionate, not just about mountain biking, but about being with youth, helping youth, and developing them. And that's what got the teams in the different areas started. And the coaches that have come in over the years, every one of them just exudes a passion and a love for these student athletes and a love for being able to be on a bike and trying to make this whole cycling thing a lifelong, love for these children to be able to want to ride their bikes and experience, everything that Utah and biking have to offer. So, I give so much of this credit to the past coaches and to the current coaches for putting on programs, having practices and assisting these kids that they want to bring their siblings, they want to bring their friends, and they want to keep growing this thing, well beyond what we may have seen in other parts of the nation.
Yeah, as a former coach with Morgan High, both Tom and I, it was so rewarding and so much fun to watch the community just come alive and support what was happening within our own little 3A high school. And the amount of people that would reach out and be really intrigued to learn more and understand more, and then people would start supporting us and posting on Instagram, the sports networks, and all of these different things. It was really surprising to me to see that happen, but it impacted our team in so many positive ways where now parents or people even that don't have kids on the team would want to financially support the team, whatever that case was, whether it was buying a team trailer to help us get to the races or anything else in between. It's just been amazing to watch, at least from my experience.
It's so infectious, it's scary. We love the sport. That's who we were. We were riding bikes well before we started coaching, and we really got involved because we wanted our children to start riding bikes so we would have the hall pass to go play, And so, that's how we ended up doing it. Well, one thing led to the other, and it was like, well, let's coach them in this league, And so, for listeners, it's a high school league, but there's also a development league, which is also in middle school. And so kids are starting it, in those middle school years, and they're building understanding and knowledge and learning how to ride a bike and take care of a bike. And by the time they get into school, these are kids who can't just get on a bike. Like, they're legitimate athletes who are racing at a very high level. And so it's cool. It's just been an awesome experience. And the wellness overall, in communities who have these teams, I'm just going to say this, and I have no data, but the wellness overall of a community when the local programs are strong within the league, it's gone up. Those are healthier communities as a result of really strong programs going on. So it's awesome. It's an incredible impact for the state of Utah. If you take 40,000 people riding bikes outside, Aspire Medical and Counseling would say this, that's a good thing for everybody's mental health in the state of Utah. It just is. So take us back a little bit. That gives us a little bit of context to the league and how it began. But tell us a little bit about Dallen, your story, if you don't mind, personally, and maybe lead that into the transition from prior life to now league life.
Sure. So, I grew up as an Army brat, if you would. I lived a number of different places. My father was active duty, so I moved to Utah my junior year of high school. I'm a Skyline graduate, and about that same time is when I got my driver's license. So I put the bike away for good. Once I had my driver's license, it was driving. Now, I'm 59 years old. There were no such things as mountain bikes. You certainly didn't have trails that you would go ride a bike on. So that wasn't an option. I was your basic stick 'em ball sport guy. I wasn't that good of an athlete. So most of my time was I practiced and then I sat the bench. So that was my athletic my athletic time going through high school. I joined the military my second year of college. I needed a way. I was engaged, and I needed a way to pay for school to be able to graduate. So I took an ROTC scholarship to be able to graduate. And from there, I went on active duty for a short period of time. Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Came back to Utah and became full-time, so active duty, but assigned to the Utah Army National Guard, and completed as we've said earlier, 32 years in that position. My last position was that of the commander, brigadier general, the commander of the Utah Army National Guard. And, as I look at that, the things that I enjoyed the most as in that final position, when I really got to be retrospective and look out and see what my career had done and the goodness of what the organization that I'd been able to be a part of for so many years was watching these young men, these young women, these soldiers accomplishing hard things. Seeing them go out and strive to do something, strive to earn something, and have to work for it, but finally get there. My time in the military, my early time in the military was during a time of peace. We did have the Gulf War, which our unit was put on standby for, but we never deployed. Back in the early 1900s, and then we had quite a period of time where especially as the National Guard, it was just training. We trained and we trained, and it's very interesting as a service member. You train to do something that you hope you never have to do.
Right.
So how do you make that training, worthwhile? How do you make it important? How do you prioritize that? And that's
is your heart in it?
Yeah, that's the hard part. Well, our warrior ethos is, I will always place a mission first. I'll never quit. I'll never accept defeat. I'll never leave a fallen comrade. So you have to be able to tie that mentality, that ethos, into a training piece of something that you don't know if you'll ever have to do. But that's the way we would as leaders, we would try to instill in our soldiers that you don't have an option. There's not an option when you get into a combat role or in those situations where you get to just say I quit, or I'm just going to give this thing up. You have to be able to accomplish what you set out to accomplish. Your life and the lives of others are going to be required to do this, and it's a very, very demanding mindset to be able to be in, to be able to force yourself into that type of a mindset while you are, in a training mode, and be able to have that. So when you do go into a combat mode, that things are reactionary. So you don't have to think through the problem. The problem, you're already working the problem as it's happening, because you have trained for those contingencies and for those things that may happen. I'm just going to tell one quick story, military story. This is when I was the 1-star. I had a unit that had canceled their weapons qualification training. It was about the same time of year, that April time where you don't know what kind of weather it is. They had gone out to qualify, and it was sleet and rain. It was horrible weather conditions. And when I talked to the commander about it the following Monday, he said, he goes, most of our soldiers would not have qualified. They would not have been able to shoot expert, in those kind of conditions. And I just had to look at him and say, well, is that the effect that we're trying to achieve? With weapons qualification, are we just trying to achieve getting the highest points available? Or are we trying to teach our soldiers to be comfortable and confident with their weapons in all situations?
Yeah.
They may not get the points they need for promotion. They may not get some of those things. So schedule a second one and have them go out in better weather to get their points. But man, we just missed an opportunity to teach somebody to do something hard in horrific conditions. And, that's the mindset. And that's what's so cool about when you look at the league now. We've had some races in some pretty horrific conditions where I guarantee these kids are not going to get, personal bests. Yeah. And you see the same thing at practices. We've had some races in some pretty swampy, some muddy conditions where luckily the landowner allowed us to still race. We've had it in near 100 degrees where the kids are wilting, and sometimes we even have to shorten a race. State championship last year, right. We had 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts coming, just blasting these poor kids as they were coming through the finish line and then going on their uphill climb. It was the worst location possible. But our times, some of these kids' times were 7 minutes slower than the year before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about getting your best time all the time. Sometimes it's about accomplishing something that is harder than they thought it was going to be, and having that. And that's what made me so excited to work with Brainstoke, is that resilient building. How to build resilience in youth, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but I don't want to keep. I don't want to go down that path quite yet, but I do want to get there.
Okay.
And I do, just really quickly. So for me, as far as my biking career goes, I started biking in the early 1900s. Some friends invited us to Moab, and my wife 1990s. I'm sorry, 1990s. Get my dates right there.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Hopefully you know what I meant.
Gary Fisher was 1910.
No, 1990s. Some friends invited my wife and I to Moab. We went to Walmart and bought some bikes for $120. They lasted about 20 minutes on the trails, so we went and rented some bikes, and I absolutely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I've been a rider ever since. 90% of my rides were by myself. I used it as my getaway, my time to get out and to think and to clear my head, and that's what biking was for me. But and so being able to tie in a job where I get to be on a bike is just it's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
When you think back to your childhood and the career choice you made, what impact did your dad's career have in your decision to join the National Guard?
My father used to say, he had 4 sons, and he said that I was the one that he never thought would join the military. I didn't like to get up early in the morning. I had very long hair. It was the 70s and 80s, and I had very long hair. And I had a problem with authority. So he said that that's the one son that won't join the military. But when times got tough and I had to figure out a way to pay for school, there's no doubt. I don't mince words with it. The only reason I joined when I did was because I had to have a way to pay for college.
Okay.
So, but after I got in and I realized what it could do for me, and I realized what I was learning in it, it easily became a career that I absolutely loved.
How long did that take where you had that shift, that thought process changed where you embraced what you were doing?
About 3 years in.
Yeah.
I mean, once you sign up, you're committed to 4 to 6 years. So the first couple of years it was like, why did I do this? And
what's all about hard
what's the first thing I can do to get out of here? When's the date that I can leave? But then as I went on my period of active duty in Fort Sill, I started to really feel the camaraderie and learning to do hard things myself, and being placed in situations where both these choices are bad. I have to figure out which is the least worse of the two.
Yeah.
That's how the military creates stress. They don't give you a right answer and a wrong answer. They give you 2 wrong answers, and you have to figure out which one's the least wrong. Yeah. And that's going through that process and the things that I was learning, it did become a true love for me.
Tell it, if you don't mind, just hit on this briefly, because in the state of Utah, there isn't enough military, people living here that it's not a part of the culture in a significant way. And so there isn't a lot of understanding just about the sacrifice and what it takes, to be involved. But we have friends, who are in the military, and one of the things that I have learned from them is that they correlate confidence, self-esteem, who they became, who they are as adults, started with military and self-discipline, learning that. So when you think back on your own journey, what was it about doing the hard thing that gave you kind of this evolutionary of becoming, who you are today, the hard thing?
The military does a great job beginning in basic training of breaking you down, of making you realize that maybe the way you've thought about yourself and the way you think about the world is not the way that will work in the military. But they also have a way of teaching you confidence. But confidence is taught through striving to be better and through trying to better yourself and better those around you. The thing that the military gives you, I think, better than most other organizations, is you have a built-in support system of the soldiers around you, of carrying leadership, that build you up. So when you break, when you don't have the ability to finish something, there's somebody in your squad, in your platoon, in your battalion that can do that for you, that can step up and carry your pack, for as long as you need until you can get yourself back on track to keep going.
When you, we like to always talk about the stories of struggle and of stoke. In the military, how did you find your stoke? Was it serving others, helping others, or was there something else that brought you a lot of joy when you were involved there?
Yeah, you mentioned the camaraderie. Was that part of it, kind of the brotherhood factor?
Absolutely. My early years in the military, I was in the field artillery, so I was around cannons, firing these great big weapons, with 100-pound projectiles, downrange. And it is a dangerous business, but it's also, there's so much risk mitigation that it's safe. But you want to do well, and you're being evaluated. And then there's rivalries among gun sections. There's rivalries among gun batteries, and you want inherently you want to be better than other people, but you can't be better by yourself. The best person on a gun line, or the best person in a fire direction control center, that's only one guy. If he's not surrounded by others that are also trying to do their best, you won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it so fun, and that's where you get the stoke is when you're able to influence others to want to do well, or you've got a good leader that's influencing you to do better, and teaching and mentoring you. That's when you start to feel it, and when you finally come together and you've got that cohesive bond, and everything you do just goes the way it's supposed to, and when things aren't going well, that's the one thing that I think is so important for youth to understand is when things aren't going well, it's not the end of the world. It's just a chance.
It's part of the process
to back up a step, find somebody to help you take those steps and go back forward. And that's where my stoke in the military came from, was being around these amazing soldiers and amazing leaders that just wanted the best for us.
In your bio, there's this progression of your career. You take multiple jobs or multiple opportunities as you work your way up, essentially through the National Guard. Major General Jeff Burton said this when he promoted you to Brigadier General, I think in 2012. Is that date right, or close
Yes.
to? He said, "We're lucky to have Dallen as our newest Brigadier General. These positions of leadership are not jobs; they are callings. We know he is ready for this challenge. Less than 0.5% get promoted to general in their careers. Dallen didn't get here because he was a self-server. He got here because he loves soldiers and he seeks to serve them." Does that encompass Dallen Atack?
I think separately when General Burton and I spoke, he said it was luck and timing is why I got promoted. So I'm not sure. I'm glad he didn't say that in the official promotion ceremony.
Smart man in front of the media, right?
Yeah. So no, General Burton and I had a great relationship, but he, for me, being able to serve, that's when you move up in leadership positions, you can't be about you can't be about you. The farther up you go up a chain in whatever it is, whatever profession you've chosen or whatever hobby you've chosen, whatever it is that you're doing, it becomes more and more of that gives you an opportunity to affect, to assist, to serve a greater number of people. And that's the selfless service that the Army teaches and expects out of their leaders. And I'm was very lucky that I had somebody that at least saw some of that in me to give me that opportunity to do so.
One question that I have for you, if you don't mind, because I'm intrigued about this. You've mentioned it a little bit. I know we're going to get into resilience, but I'm just going to throw it out here now because you brought it up. Can people become who they want to become in terms of confidence and doing well in this life without doing hard things?
Absolutely not. I an easy path doesn't build somebody's, doesn't, you can't get stronger without lifting something heavier than what you want to be able to carry. I mean, you just basic weightlifting, makes your muscles stronger. And if you want to have more endurance, you have to run harder. You have to run longer. You have to run faster. You have to go through something hard. The same thing works in the mind. You've got to be able to challenge yourself and to overcome things that are hard for you. Unfortunately, as my last position as the commander of the Guard, we were averaging about 3 suicides a year in the military, in the Army National Guard, and every one of those, we do an investigation on, and every one of those I reviewed, and there were some interesting things that I learned inside of these reviews and these investigations. The first, which is just for information and not something that I really want to delve into, is that in every single case of the 18 suicides that I was personally reviewed, somebody knew that this individual was suicidal and either was slow on contacting or just didn't contact somebody that may have been able to help. And it was usually somebody that was close to them, a relative, a close friend, and so forth. The second thing was that these individuals, were hurting. There was something that had gone wrong in their life. Most of the times it was a personal relationship, and they didn't know how to take the next step. They didn't know what to do when something went wrong. And in a lot of these cases, they were something that were pretty serious, but they didn't know how to move forward from something that went wrong for them. And that's my NICA why, is I want these children, these kids, to start developing that resiliency, that emotional, physical, and mental resiliency at an earlier age than what I was receiving them in the military. They can start to develop that as 6th, 7th, 8th, 12th graders. And I can't see, there's a lot of great ways to do it, but I think this mountain biking league is that's the fix. That's a fix, not the only fix, but it's certainly a fix. To go in hand with what Brain Stoke has talked about, we're getting them outside, getting them some sunshine. We're getting them on some trails. We're making them do something physical. We're disconnecting from our telephones, unless they're on Strava, but they're disconnecting from screen time for a short period of time. So all those things are building, some resiliency in them. Now we're adding in the camaraderie of a team, the team aspect. So now they have somebody they can turn to when they do good and when they have challenges, and they're building that team. And then finally, we are building in that competitive lifestyle. I did say that that's not one of our values, but it is inherent in what we do. They're competing against themselves, and they're trying to become better. And they have a controlled environment with those wonderful coaches that they are able to get better when they do something good and they get praise, they get handshake, they get high five, they get hugs. They have a terrible race, and they get more. There's more cheering for the kid that comes running in at the end of his race than there is the kid that rides his bike at the end of the race.
Yeah, firsthand.
Yeah, these riders that have a terrible race are getting more props sometimes than the ones that are sitting on the podium.
Yeah.
And the impact that has for that particular person. I mean, I'm thinking back to my time as a coach at Morgan, and we had a 9th grader join our team, and I was really apprehensive and nervous just witnessing what was happening at practices initially. And as he progressed through this league for 4 years, at state, he embraced me and just bawled.
Yeah.
And just bawled his eyes out. And I started bawling, and his mom's now bawling, just because of what it meant to him and how he changed, and the relationships he built with all of his peers, and how he became beloved on our team and respected, and then the relationships he was able to develop with me and with other adults or coaches on the team. It was, I think every coach has got probably a very similar story like that every year.
Dallen, when you think about that, that's one example. There's thousands of those stories that we have seen. You've seen even more than we have. What would you say from your perspective, military, now doing, being involved in the league, is that boy's emotion that's coming out in him at that point, is that I'm now happy living in my own skin? Is that confidence? Like what would you say that has gone on, the evolution of him and what he's become?
I like that. I love the word culmination. This is from the time he started in the league, or that started on that season, everything that he's done, through those practices, and then, coming out to the races, the friendships that he's built along the way, the positive influence he's had from the coaches, all of those things. And now, finishing that final race of the season, that state championship, I think he's really finally realized, like you said, I matter. I'm somebody, and I'm happy. I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy with what I can accomplish, and people see me for that. They see me and they love me, and I did it. I set myself, from the time my mom and dad made me join the league, and now I just finished this last race. I did it, and what a strength that has for that young man, and just boiled over with emotion. He just finally realized that he had accomplished something, and it wasn't just a 1 hour long, and it wasn't, making it to the next level of his, of his PlayStation. He accomplished something that was tough, and he did it. And that, how could he not just feel something?
Yeah.
It seems like, in knowing him, that despite the finish lines and the bike accolades, it was almost like the people and the connections and the relationships along the way, that is what reinforced what he was experiencing. I could get emotional. Excuse me. Because we remember him showing up the first day of practice, and we were like, what do we do with this kid? Where do we even go? And now he's gone, but Preston and I still see his stuff on Facebook, and the dude has become a man, confident in his ability to go out into the world and to do and become and accomplish the things that he wants in life. And, I know it may even sound to listeners like we're overselling the league or the mountain bike, but it, again, to your point, Dallen, this is just the evolutionary process of becoming someone that we love being in this life. And it just so happens that it occurred a lot on the bike.
Yeah.
Part of a team, part of a league, having good experiences with other people. So,
absolutely. And, I had, I've had over the years, I've had multiple coaches come and tell me that they've been told that they've, saved somebody's life. But, you always remember the first one. And the first one wasn't even here in Utah. It was before our race season. My first race season even started. NICA sent me back to New Jersey to learn how to become a league director, to watch a race. They're a spring league. They had 168 riders racing that day. But we have one wave that's bigger than that. But
Totally.
But that was the extent, and they were racing at a Boy Scout camp, a 2-mile course on grass. So a little different than the way things we do here out in the Rocky Mountains. But during the day, as the day was going on, I was repping my Utah League shirt, my race crew shirt, and I was standing on one side of the snow fencing, and this gentleman came up to me. He was a very large man, a great big guy, and he saw me and he said, "Hey, you're from Utah?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "Come here." And he just reached across the snow fencing and he just gave me this huge bear hug. And while he was hugging me, I could feel his body start to shake, and he was just crying. And he pulled back, and when he was able to compose himself, he said, "The Utah League saved my son's life." And it's like, I had no idea how to respond to that. And I think I asked him, "Did you start in Utah? Are you from Utah?" He goes, "No." He said, "My son was suicidal. My son, we had him in and out of counseling. We had him in and out of the emergency room. And one day we were just YouTubing some things." He goes, "I was YouTubing some things, and I saw this YouTube video from the Utah High School Mountain Biking League. And I showed it to my son, and I said, 'Do you think that would be fun? Do you think you'd like to do that?' And he said, 'Yeah, Dad, I could try that.'" He goes, "So we went to the bike shop, and we asked them if they knew of any local teams, and sure enough, there was a team. And his son got on it, and 2 years into the thing, he said his son is done with counseling. He's happy. He's got friends, and he said, I know that video, watching that video, is what saved my son's life. Everything obviously that happened after that." He said, "But if I would never have seen that, I would never even have thought." And it's just, it's out there. This young man who he was out racing. I never even got a chance to meet the young man personally. But I met his dad, and I know what his dad thought happened just because of mountain biking.
So I assume that was early on in you joining the league, right?
Yeah, that was my first couple of months before our first race season had even started. So I hadn't even seen a Utah race yet.
So at that point, I'm guessing you didn't necessarily know the true impact you were going to have. Did that now sink in? On what was ahead?
Yeah, it did. And then after that first year and hearing, when we meet with coaches, we always start with My NICA Whys, where our coaches can tell us why they're dedicating hundreds of hours to being on trails with kids on bikes. And every one of them revolves around a story of either a rider or a group of riders that has learned how to do hard things. That's the story. I've never had a coach say, "Well, I do this because I think I've got the next Olympian, and we're gonna get there, and someday when she wins a gold medal, she's gonna say on the TV camera, 'It's all because of my high school cycling league coach.'" We've never had that.
Right.
Every one of these coaches, when they go to their why, it's because they know what good they're doing. They're saving lives, if you would.
Yeah.
Of these kids.
Transitioning a little bit to maybe this other part of life, walk us through. You shared this in the very beginning when we started, but talk a little bit about how you led or how you were introduced into the job at the league, because I as much as we chatted about that in the beginning, I think that's kind of a cool story. And so talk us through that again. What was going on at the time when you reached out with your resume?
Yeah, so, I knew a little bit about the league just because I live in Draper, I ride in Corner Canyon, so how can you not know about the league because there's so many teams practicing there.
How many athletes this year will Corner Canyon have?
They're really sitting right about 200 at the high school, and then the Draper Park Middle School will have another 120, 140. So just in that area alone, but then you've got, Alta is right there with another 100 kids.
Yeah.
So and then we have a lot of teams that, that are in the vicinity that still come. Corner Canyon's a great spot to ride. So,
yeah.
And their trails are very conducive to what we're trying to teach as far as cross-country racing goes. So
yeah.
It's a great spot. But so I was familiar with the league. I had actually assisted. Even though I never went to the races, we were a league sponsor for a couple of years in the very beginning with our recruiting teams. So I knew a little bit about the league, but I had no idea that it had grown to the size. When I came in, it was actually sitting it had just hit 3,000 when I came into the league. So it was definitely still on a good sharp trajectory upward. But I knew that my time in the military was coming to an end. I had about a year to go before I was planning on my retirement. So I reached out to a friend that I just met, a gentleman in my neighborhood, and he was a professional headhunter. And I thought, well, I'll just go to him and see, show him my resume and start to get some idea of it's been 32 years since I've applied for a job. How do you do this thing now? So I put a resume together, and actually I hadn't even put my resume. I was just talking to him about putting a resume together, and as we were talking, he said I know about a job. He goes, they're looking for an executive director for the Utah High School Mountain Biking League. He had been a previous president of the high school league board. Had stepped down the year before, but they had actually asked him in his role through his profession to maybe come up with a name or two. So he told me a little bit about the league, and of course, like I said, I'd heard about the league. He didn't even know I biked, so that was kind of fun. But I went home that evening and I jumped on the league's website, and I was literally on it till 3 o'clock in the morning, just looking at it, watching the videos, reading. I couldn't believe what this league really was. I just knew it as mountain bike race teams. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
But when I got to see what the league was really providing and what they were offering these kids and what, the scope of this thing was, to me, it was like, that's what I want to do. I want this job. Well, just jumping out of the military is not that easy. You don't just do a 2-week notice, especially in the position I was in. And it was also, I wasn't sure what if this was really the best timing for what I wanted to do. And I talked to the two people closest to me, my wife and my father, who both said I was crazy, that I needed to stay in. If the military is not kicking you out yet, then why are you even retiring? And it's like, yeah, 'cause it's time. And I went back and literally he told me, he says, I can give you a couple of weeks to decide. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to turn in a resume unless I've decided to leave the military. So on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock, I took my resume to him and I said, I've decided that if you all want to hire me, then I'll make the jump. And about a month of interviews and so forth. And I actually worked it out with my previous boss. You mentioned him earlier, but I worked it out with him, and I actually retired about 6 months earlier than what my normal retirement date would be, just so I could get in time to get the league ready and prepped for that 7th season of racing.
It's a great story. Just hearing how that kind of came together and, how that all worked out is awesome. In terms of I'm intrigued about the board and that process and how that works. What would you say they were looking at in a director? I mean, I would imagine 32 years in the military, leadership capability, they were all over that. It had to have been an attractive fit for them.
Yeah, I think, when I met with them, the main charges I was given was to get the league to be self-sustaining. At the time, and just, the sheer numbers and the growth that the league had. I mean, it was unprecedented across NICA for a league to grow as fast as Utah was. And, the staff at the time, I mean, every year they're coming into the league and it's like, boy, we just grew another 1,000 kids, so just that power curve of, you're constantly behind the curve because you just didn't know.
The sheer numbers.
Yeah, just those numbers and then building a budget when are we going to have 1,500 kids or are we going to have 2,500 kids? How do you build a budget based on that? So it was just, that piece. So they really were looking at me to come in, and they wanted somebody that would build a strategic plan for where is the league going to be in 5 years, and how do we become self-sustaining and get on top of things, so we're not always right before race season trying to figure out how are we going to pay for that, how are we going to put this, where are we going to race, just those little things. Just the director at the time did an amazing job. I mean, she started it from nothing and got it to 3,000 kids. That's incredible. But the growth pattern was exponential. And how do you manage that? So that's what they were looking at for me, was to come in and try to stretch that out. And my military background was such that, building a 5-year plan was pretty much, what I was doing.
Yeah. What do you anticipate are some of the challenges the league's going to face, maybe in the next 5 years now?
The biggest challenge we're facing right now is availability of trails. That's been an issue since I came into the league. There's, finding race venues is hard. We've got a lot of places that want us to race, but there's a difference between where you can ride and where you can race. There's a lot of great trails all over Utah, but there's not that many great trails that have 25 acres of flat land that I can put in a parking lot for 2,000 cars and an acreage for all the tents that we set up, and for that have a start road of a quarter of a mile on an uphill grade and all the things that we need for racing. There's just not that many of them, especially in the highly populated counties. So race venues is an issue, but the even harder is the practice space. Our teams, and as we go into this year where we can't even make it up to a lot of the high altitude trails, it's really hard.
Yep.
It's going to be really hard for us this year to be able to fit teams, but also be good stewards. And we're really going to have to show good etiquette to the other trail users. There's a lot of people out there that love being out on our trails. They're not ours, but we are definitely, and according to the governor's office, we are the largest footprint of trail users in the state.
Yeah, I've witnessed that firsthand, how difficult that is. And I can see, with the growth and the volume of snow we've had, just thinking about where are all these teams going to go in the short term? It's a battle. So if that is the issue, what initiatives are you involved in, or is the league involved in, or with the government or the governor's office? Are there things you're doing to try to combat that?
Yes, I meet regularly with the governor's now division of outdoor recreation, and they've got a number of grants. So what we're able to do as a league is we've got a lot of coaches that are looking at growing trails in their areas. There's a lot of land managers that, be it city, county, BLM, private ownership that want mountain bike trails because they see both the need for it, but they also, like the guy that's let us race in his property down in St. George for 3 years, he knows that's a good draw for the development, the house development, the home developments that he's creating.
Absolutely.
People want to live near trail access. So there's a lot of trails that people want to build. So as a league, what we're doing is we're helping connect these grants from the governor's office to the trail managers or the trail owners. Just had meeting 2 days ago with the city of Roosevelt. They're a city, they're a government organization, but not even familiar that the state offers some of these things. So a lot of times it's just education, trying to get them. And then we will assist them through the grant writing process. We assist them through some of our labor. Our riders, we're averaging over 12,000 hours of volunteer trail time, trail maintenance, trail cleanup, and even trail building, under somebody else's watchful eye, a year from our league. Those hours can translate to dollars that cities can use to match to build new trails. So there's a big matching piece. So we can provide that. So I'll talk to the local teams, and we'll get commitments from local teams when there's a local area that wants to build a trail, and then they can use that as matching dollars to get the grants. So we'll work with them on that piece. We also have a trail designer, expert trail designer, not on my staff, but available to us. And I will put him on an hourly wage, and he'll work with these, especially with race courses. He'll work with these land managers on developing a race course. He's developed a lot of the race courses that we're racing on right now. And he'll work with them on that design and what we need to be able to race on the trail. But he'll also help these individuals just with practice areas, to make it, because we're across country. We know that there's a lot of downhill trails. There's a lot of great uphill trails, but we need to be able to have loops, for our practices, and not just one way up and one way down. But we also need to be able to share that with hikers and other bikers and equestrians, and so there's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of pieces of these things that make it so important. So that's what we're doing as a league, and we've actually got, we've got race courses that we're actually planning out all the way out to 2025 right now. We've got areas that are in that process. So we're starting two new. We've got two new locations this year that we hope to race at. Last year we introduced one new course. Next year we have two, maybe three new courses. So the biggest issue we have is trying to find a place for state championships, because that thing's a whole other beast.
Yeah, just because of weather at that point. Right?
Yeah, weather. We've only got a few places where we can race. And we thought we had one more year in St. George, but that developed on top of us, and so we've got a couple of options.
You attracted too many buyers.
Yeah, too many people came down that he's decided to develop it.
Sell a lot of real estate.
Yeah, he's
down there.
He's putting a soccer field down where we held our pit zone.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
So that I wouldn't say it got pulled out from under us. We knew it was going to happen sooner or later, but we're trying to come up with, and we're actually working with the governor's office to find a place that we can call our own.
Yeah.
For a state championship race.
I think that's amazing to me. When I think about just, again, if state policy is being shaped by the mass of this organization and what's going on throughout this state, that says a lot, and I credit Governor Cox, in what they're doing. I think the economic policy in Utah, is pretty impressive in terms of just the overall collaboration that's going on. So I think it's cool that you're involved in that level, in working on these things. If, those who are listening to this, if you know of land access, if you know of opportunities, funnel it through. I mean, we've been surprised. We are from a part of the state where a lot of the land is privately owned. And historically speaking, the culture has been stay off the land, no hunters, no one, stay off the land. And in our time coaching, it's remarkable that the grandchildren of the landowners or whoever, the connection, the relationship, a lot of the private landowners who are like, no way, no how, are saying, hey, help us do this. We love what kids are receiving. We love what's going on, in the community with these teams, and it's opening up. I shouldn't say hearts are being softened, but what's going on is that the landowners who historically were not allowing anybody to be on the land are saying, this is really cool for a good cause, and it's opening up, which is amazing. So
now we see that with landowners, we see it with sponsors. Very rarely do I meet somebody and I let them know what I do. And this can be just anywhere. And everybody knows somebody now that, I've got a nephew that races over on that team. Is that part of you guys? I was visiting with a large trucking company, just getting some ideas for our own logistics. And about 10 minutes into our discussion, I see him tapping on his cell phone. He's the CEO of the company, and all of a sudden he shows me a picture. He goes, "Is this you guys?" And it's a picture of him and his 8th grade grandson, and you can see our start arch. I said, "Yeah, that's us." And he just looked at the guys in his office. He goes, "I don't need to be in this meeting anymore. I know who you guys are. You guys figure out how to help these guys out." And he got up and walked out. It's like, I'm giving him my normal pitch, and it's like, no, I don't need to see your normal pitch. I know who you
Dallen's
guys are.
a power broker.
This
guy is brokering economic policy and power brokering throughout the state. It's cool because the result is goodness for kids. I just think that is such a unique thing, in terms of what's going on. It's just unique. It just is in terms of the impact and influence for good in the state. So that's cool. What else are you stoked about going into this season? When you think about the numbers and obviously land and race access, those are some challenges, some obstacles. But what are you stoked about? As you meet as a team, your staff, your group, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah. So for us, we just started our venue surveys. We go out and we get to go and ride. We try to ride the trails if they're cleared off with the snow yet.
Yeah.
But this is part of my favorite time of year, because now we're getting back with some of our seasonal employees, some of my race crew, some of these friends that I've got, and I'm riding again. That's the best part of it, is I'm back on my bike. The sun's coming out, getting dirty again, and it's it's just there's nothing like that. Those first couple rides of the spring, the legs and lungs are killing me because I certainly didn't ride my stationary like I should have in the wintertime. But it just feels so good to be back out there, and I think for me, it goes back to that camaraderie issue. I've got, like we said, we've got 144 seasonal positions. And it's so fun because so many of those are people that are coming back. So it's my chance to see some good friends again. It's a good chance that we're starting to see the coaches again. We, after COVID, we did everything by Zoom meetings. Well, this last year we didn't offer Zoom. We did our coach summits. We did 2 coach summits, one here in the Sandy area and then one down in Cedar City. No, we're not doing it by Zoom anymore. We're doing it in person. So we got to see and be with these coaches again. And just being around other people with the same passions, that's what makes this fun. And that's what, I'm actually going to be going and doing some first aid training this weekend. So I'm going to be around another, 20 coaches. Some of them I probably don't even know yet, haven't even met yet. But just being able to go and be around, people that care, that's what gets my stoke up.
Yeah.
Just being able to be back out on a bike with friends and with people that I know love this just as much as I do.
Awesome. What's your favorite trail? If you could ride anywhere, where would you go? Aside from the Holy Land of Moab, where would you be?
I'm going to have to go back to Richfield. The Pavant system, the Spinal Tap, Telegraph, Killing It, Carnage, and I'm saying that because I love that trail. But I've got to exact my revenge on it. At least in my podcast, you can't see it. But I busted
Where's
up.
that pinky going?
I busted up last year. I still don't have full grip. I messed up pretty bad and caught a rock outcropping, and it tumbled me pretty bad. And I've got 6 pins and a plate. We had it taken out, and the finger snapped again, so they had to put it back in. So I'm still in rehab. But I need to exact my revenge. They are amazing trails. It's a lot of fun. They've got some great. It's one of the few places I can say I actually enjoy the uphill. Mm-hmm. There's enough tech and the scenery is amazing. It's on the west side of the freeway, so you're up in the Red Rocks. But that's the trail that I got to go and conquer it. Got to get back on the horse and ride it because it took its pound of flesh out of me, and I'm going to go. I'm going to need to take it back.
This is that resilience coming out in you. The training has done well, so that's cool. When you're on your way to Richfield or anywhere else in terms of the bike, what's on your playlist? What's from the early 1900s when you were growing up?
Sorry. So I think I mentioned it before. I was a long hair.
Yeah.
I am definitely a 70s, 80s heavy metal guy.
Okay. Like Metallica?
Absolutely.
Inner Sandman?
So my Hollywood call sign. They
I
call
love
Hollywood
this.
call sign in the military was Sandman.
Stop it.
Yes,
Wait, nice call, Tom.
That was actually my Hollywood call sign was Sandman.
I'm feeling something right now.
Yeah,
like,
so
the hair on the back of my mullet is standing up. Like, this is legit.
So when you had to cut that mullet off,
no, I was pre-mullet. The zipper head, so just parted down the middle and feathered all the way back. I'm not. I was out. I was not in the mullet phase. I'm older than that.
Yeah.
So definitely.
Okay.
So
Metallica.
the good rock and roll prior to all the synthesizer stuff.
Yep.
And then we enter those dark ages of the synthesized music. And then we had some bands come back in.
Yeah.
The grunge and the Metallicas, the speed metal. So, so really Metallica is what I didn't listen to it as a kid because they weren't even around yet.
Yeah.
But so, just good heavy. And then when I don't want to hear, some, the too heavy stuff, I do still go to a little bit of blues, a little bit of bass, just something a little bit slower.
Cool.
But so that's
our buttoned-up general listens to Metallica.
yeah. So
Love it.
Maybe some Aldanova.
yeah. some really really early ZZ Top.
Yeah,
some early
now
ZZ
we're
Top.
talking.
Just just a couple of hombres from. I grew up in South Texas was where I did most of my junior high school and high school. So,
Cool.
But I'm not a country western guy. But I do. I have been to some Willie and Waylon concerts in my time.
We like that. We like that.
So good.
Any way you want to freestyle, take a few. If there's any topic that you would say, yeah, if I ever have the opportunity, I would love to share this or that. Anything is game.
Now, for me, it's about gratitude. It's I can't thank the people enough that have made, and it goes back my military career. I had some mentors that, and these aren't just when you say mentors, it's different from leaders. A leader is somebody that usually outranks you. A mentor can be a peer, it can be a subordinate. And I feel like a lot of my military career, I learned from people that were, militarily speaking, rank speaking, were subordinate to me. Some of the non-commissioned officers, some of those sergeant majors that supposedly worked for me, taught me more in my career than I could ever, have learned without them. If I would have just relied only on the officers that I reported to, I would not have learned, a fraction of what I learned in the military. And that goes the same for the league. I stepped into the league. I'd never done it before. I'd never been. I'd done some pretty big events in the military, but doing it in the league is a lot different. I had the budget I had to worry about now. And I was truly mentored by a young man named Jason Christiansen, who was only 22 years old at the time, but he was the longest running employee of the league, of the staff when we got there. So I had a 22-year-old, and I had another 20-some-year-old young lady named Tasha, and another wonderful lady that's still with the staff, Brooke Howard, that mentored me when I came into the league. So I'm a one-star general, like you said, commanding over 5,000, but I needed help, and I had those three individuals showing me, how to get started and how to run this thing. And then when that season came and I got to meet the seasonal staff for the first time and truly see how to set up a race. We've got some great people. We've got some operations officer, and y'all are familiar with Ryan Nielsen. He's up in your neck of the woods. I mean, he was the operations officer, or operations manager when I first came into the league. He's still there, walking me through why we do what we do. And I learned that from every one of these positions, these race crew. Why do we set up our feed zone the way we do? Why do we put course marshals where we do? Why do we register the way we do? Why do we stage the way we do? All those things I needed to learn. And I had some wonderful people. Some of them aren't with the league anymore. Some of them kind of graduated out of it. Others are still there. But I couldn't have imagined being able to come in this position without having those folks. And, of course, the coaches. I made some decisions. I still make some decisions that I know they disagree with. But most of them know that my heart's in the right place with this thing, and I know their hearts are in the right place, and this is the best thing for the kids. So, we work together. This is definitely a community that cares, and we buckle down and we just try to make the best things happen. And if we make a mistake, we learn from it and we figure it out before the next week. If something goes well, we pat each other on the shoulder and say, let's try to do it again. Let's try to do it that way again next time.
Yeah.
And we just try to make this thing the best we can for all those student athletes that are showing up.
Appreciate you sharing so much about the league, how it operates, how it runs, and just the impact you're making with you and your crew. We've witnessed it firsthand, and we know how valuable it is, and that's why we're supporting and sponsoring. That's why Brain Stoke's involved with you, because of all of these great things you're talking about. Are you cool if all the coaches and riders and parents start calling you Sandman?
Well, I've been called far worse.
Okay.
So
Sandman it is, everybody.
I love it. And I think that Metallica probably should be the official playlist of all races now.
That will be this at the start line to our race. And to Sandman.
I for sure know what music Jackson is going to start this intro with, which is cool. Maybe two more questions for you. One, is there one leader that sticks out to you that you've looked to or listened to or over your lifetime where you're like, yeah, this is a leader that I've tried to pattern my life after?
oh man, don't make me go there. You're going to get me emotional now. I've had some great ones, but I was raised by an amazing dad, and he was in the military, but there's nobody that shaped me more than him. And, he always had time for me. He was my baseball coach, my Little League football coach. He worked with me in scouts. He worked with me, all through my life. We used to spend, we won't even get into this, but I'm a motorhead at heart as well. Old cars, we restored a couple of old Mustangs together. And, we've always had that type of relationship. And there's nobody that shaped my life more than my father. And, he hasn't written any books. I doubt he's ever been on a podcast, nor probably will he. But, there's nobody whose opinion and whose guidance I would seek, before his.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
No, I appreciate having you guys. And
Heck yeah, it's been great.
It's great having Brainstoke a part of this, and I look forward to more and better podcasts than this one in the future.
Thanks again.
No doubt. Thank you, Dallen, and the league for all you do. We appreciate it.
All right. Y'all take care.
You've all had your daily dose.